perspective, you also should have a strong value proposition when you sit down with your clients. And so here's mine. First, it all starts with customer service. I'm from the Midwest. It's really important to me that you kind of do what you say you're going to do and be there for people. So what I like to do is, if you would, write down my phone number. And it was kind of a weird way to start a relationship, right? I mean, I'm already giving you my personal cell phone number. It's 949-933-6622. 949-933-6622. Again, my name's Scott. My last name's Kopp, C-O-P. Don't yell it. Right? Chief of Police. I found out that's what COP stands for the other day. Did you know that? I never heard that before. Anyway, so you've got my number, and if you call me, I call everybody back in 60 minutes or less. It's my promise to you, right? Not even Domino's does that anymore, right? I want to make sure that you know, though, I'm serious. Talk is cheap. There's a lot of people that show up in cheap suits saying nice things. What I want you to know is that there's actions behind these words, and you can put me to the test at any point. But there's one caveat, only one caveat to calling me. I'm telling you, you call me at night, call me on the weekends. I never stop working. I really care about being great at this job. But the one caveat is you've got to have your securities license. If you don't have your securities license, don't call me. I don't know the question, the number, the answer number 39 or whatever the case is, right? So just make sure you got your license. Okay, I work on a team. I also have an internal. My internal's name is AJ. And I'll give you his phone number. It's toll-free, 800-421-0807. 800-421-0807. And he's on the desk in Chicago. They're 2 hours in front of us. So he's leaving every day at like 3:30. I'm like, dude, come on, stick around. My West Coast people are still in the office. But the good news is that he's in the office like 6:30 every morning. So if you're an early riser, probably early better than late is kind of the model there. But he's there to support you as well. While I'm out doing this sort of thing, hand-to-hand combat, he's the air support. So he's there. We keep the phone duct taped to his hand there in Chicago. He sits at the desk all day waiting for your call. So please, if you need a hypothetical run or anything like that, feel free to give him a call. That's what he can help with. I'm driving around. I can help with sales ideas and talking about the funds and things like that. But don't be afraid to call either one of us. How's everybody feeling Monday morning? Pretty good. I'm working on some of the bugs, I think. My brain's not working properly. I'm stuttering a little bit. All right, we'll get warmed up, though. Don't worry. All right, so the first thing is the customer service element. This is very important to me. If it's important to you, please consider us the best in the business. Also, when you think about this from your client perspective, I think this aligns when you tell them what they should be caring about. They also have a lot of choices on who they can do business with. Maybe part of the reason that you're asking them to do business with you is because you're going to be there for them when they call. And so I think there's great consistency there when you can say, hey, look, you can call me. I'm going to be there for you. And then also, I value the same things when I choose who to work with. This maniac from Invesco, let's call him. If the phone rings and you're still here 60 minutes, he's going to call back. He's a crazy man. It's also one of the reasons we'll have to take a 5-minute break at the top of the hour just to make sure I don't have any missed calls. All right, so we got that going. All right, so customer service, number one. Number two is Invesco. We've got a ton of momentum, you guys. Invesco is one of the biggest invests in the business. The rumor mill is swirling right now. Don't say anything, but news broke on Friday. We might be buying Oppenheimer. So another big company that here we're acquiring. We just bought Guggenheim, and that deal closed in April. So here's an example of the big getting bigger, and I think you're going to continue to see this trend in our industry as margins and fees compress. And I've got a great lineup, and we'll talk plenty about products and investments here in just a little bit. But what I'd like to do is shelve that just for a moment and get to point number three. So customer service, the company is really strong, the investments are really good, but the third and maybe most critical element is ideas. Ideas are where the money is made. And I would argue that the person that you choose to work with should bring the best ideas to the table. Right? The wholesaler with the best ideas should win. And at Invesco, we've got some of the best ideas in the entire industry. Now, I'm biased, right? Because I think, I'm really good at what I do. But you be the judge of this. I've got great ideas here for you today that I look forward to sharing with you. Things that are not product related at all. Things that just simply help you with the softer skills of our business. Maybe it's how to recruit or find the money. Maybe it's how to communicate. or get an idea across. And that's what I wanted to begin with here today with one of my seminal programs called story selling. Story selling is a foundational approach to how do you get across this idea that sometimes can be complex investment subjects over the KT to a grandma or grandpa, right? Because gone are the days where somebody would get up all, fancy and start trying to use a bunch of words to impress. These days, simplicity wins. You need to make sure that people understand what you're talking about. He who can say it the simplest will win the business, or she, right? Okay, so story selling is this idea of making the unknown known using the familiar. Let me give you an idea of what we're talking about here. I'm reminded of the story of the advisor down in Georgia. And maybe you run into this situation as well, where you're trying like heck to get somebody to diversify, and they own just one investment. Maybe they got all their money in Amazon or Bitcoin or one of these things, or maybe it's their parents or grandparents' stock that they inherited. And so they feel really emotionally tied to this position, right? And you're trying to convince them for all the world they need to diversify. This is an age-old challenge in our industry. And let me share with you how one advisor down in Georgia overcame this obstacle. If you follow golf at all, down in Georgia, golf is pretty big because they do the Masters there every year in Augusta. I don't know if you're watching over the weekend, but they had a big tournament in Atlanta at Eastlake. Tiger won again, right? So a lot of people, and I'm not huge on sports analogies because usually you're just working with a smaller segment of the population. But for this advisor, what she did down there, because it was a hotbed for golf, was really powerful. She said, when I talk to you about diversifying, what I'm really trying to say is imagine if you were out golfing and you only had one club in your bag. How would you do? I mean, naturally, if you only had a driver, you'd do real well off the tee, but how would you get out of the sand? Right? How would you putt it the last 6 feet there? How good would your score overall look? And for her, this really helped bridge the gap between a concept that was maybe unfamiliar and uncomfortable, diversifying, right? Even the word is kind of, what do you mean? Versus something that her folks in Georgia were really familiar with, which was golf. And so this is a quintessential story sell example for how we talk about investments at Invesco. So here's the concept, making the unknown known by using the familiar. We're going to use analogies, stories, metaphors to really help people get their arms around these subjects. And here are some of the potential benefits of taking the story selling approach. Your advice will become more compelling, engaging, and persuasive. Your clients will make faster, more confident decisions. Anybody in this room want faster, more confident decisions from their clients? Yeah, absolutely. And then what this will also do is it will help you develop relationships, because you just don't want clients. What you want are people that are actually very loyal, right? That actually end up becoming friends. This is the case for many of the best relationships in your book of business. We're going to show you how this concept can help get you there quicker so they just don't become clients, but instead loyal friends. So what's interesting about this presentation is Invesco does a lot of research that goes into this stuff. There's other ones that I can bring to you through the years. There's one called like Rainmaker, working with high net worth clients. We partner with Russ Allen Prince on that. He's a really well-known guy that works with high net worth individuals. I've got another one called Words to Use and Words to Lose. That's a really fascinating one. We work with, in that case, Frank Luntz and his partners. Maybe you've seen him around political time where they're testing the words at the debates and seeing what people think is, a good way to say something versus a bad way. I'll give you a quick example of that. I love that subject of replacing good words with bad words with good words, rather. Here's an example. We say risk tolerance. How many times a week? I mean, risk tolerance, we know what that means, but you know what the client hears when you say risk tolerance?
Money.
Yeah, they hear risk, right? They hear pain threshold, like, oh, tell me when. Instead, what our research shows is consider replacing that phrase risk tolerance with comfort zone. Comfort zone. That's all I'm trying to do is when I ask you these questions that all sound the same, just trying to figure out your comfort zone. So we know the right mix of stocks and bonds to use. A lot easier on the ear, isn't it? So that's an example of words to use and words to lose. So often we rely on experts to help us build these presentations. In this case, one of the reasons I love this presentation so much is the experts are all of you. Not literally, but this idea that what we did was we went and we tapped into the best advisors that are actually out in the street working with the retail public every single day to find out what was most effective at the field level. So I love this presentation because it's really built from the successes of many advisors around the country. No expert just telling you, how it should be, which is always refreshing. Okay, so here's our agenda today. Number one, we're going to talk about the potential benefits of having a whole brain conversation. Whole brain. We'll dive into what we mean by that. Number two, we're going to talk about why it matters to be curious. And then number three, I'm going to give you some great stories from the field. The neat thing about this presentation is instead of it being largely theory, which it is on the front end, at the back end, I'm going to give you some real practical stories that if you like it, you can go out and if you had an appointment this afternoon, you can plug and play right away. So I'm going to give you some examples that hopefully you can have some immediate benefit from utilizing if it sounds good in your voice, if you like the way it sounds. All right, fair enough. Any questions on anything so far? I always like when you ask questions. If you have anything that you want to, time always goes better if I'm not just yelling for 2 hours. But, let me know if there's anything that pops up. If you've got a question, you're probably not the only one. All right? Okay, let's go ahead and dive in. So if you think about the conventional sales process, if you ever taught sales, quite frankly, maybe you've never even had a sales course. But if you did, this is the conventional sales process you would have been taught. A stands for application. This is where all that knowledge that you acquired, you're supposed to impress your client by then dumping on them everything. So application. And then when you think about B, what's B in sales? If you're doing it right, what is B? B stands for benefits. Remember, anytime you're talking about an investment or a product, you're not supposed to talk about features, right? People don't buy features, they buy the benefit. All right, so B is benefit in sales. And then what is C? What's C stand for when it comes to sales? Closing, right? ABC, always be closing. That's right. Glenn Ross. So closing is C always, and then D is decision time. I've presented my case, I've closed you, now we're ready for you to go ahead and say yes and sign on the dotted line. Time to take action. Is this how it goes, though? I mean, this is what they teach you, but does it go this smoothly? No? What happens? Why does it not go smoothly? What happens during this process? Objections pop up. Isn't that amazing? You think it's just going to be easy, and then all of a sudden they start, what about? So here's the challenge, is that in the traditional sales process, it's easy for clients to throw up a brick wall and stop you dead in your tracks. What story selling has the potential to do is help you overcome that challenge of objections by talking about the things that are likely going to be challenging earlier on in the presentation so that they don't have these hanging questions out there. Everything is really well understood. So story selling at the end of the day is about making the unknown known, using the familiar, but it's really about helping clients make that leap over those objections, and again, helping you get faster, more confident decisions. Because when it comes to making complex decisions and having a short amount of time to make them, most clients will rely on this, intuition. If I were to ask you to define intuition, what would you say? What would you say intuition? What would you say?
Gut feeling.
Gut feeling. That's what everybody says, right? Gut feeling. This is exactly what happens, again, when people are faced with these complex decisions and not enough time to make a good decision. They'll go back as to what we call it, the vapor of past experience. The vapor of past experience. Maybe it's that salesman that ripped you off 5 years ago, right? Or maybe it was the last bad experience you had when it came to investments at the bank, maybe. Or maybe it was your mom and dad sitting around the kitchen table when you were little talking about, I don't even get worried about that stock market. That's for rich people, right? That's not for folks like us. Whatever the case is, this is really what we're fighting. These feelings that develop at a very young age, and it really informs how we work with money, even as an adult. I can share with you around my house, my mom was super cheap. It was like generic everything, we never had a name brand of anything. So now as I got older, basically it's just like, you go one of two ways. You either go mouth way, you go the other way. Yeah, I would never touch anything generic. I've always got to now go out and get, even though I know that the allergy medicine is the exact same active ingredient. My mom's a nurse and she showed me, there's just something about, Dimetapp or Claritin. It gives me a little bit better feeling like it's actually going to work, right? So tapping into this can be really instructive when it comes to working with your clients. Where are their intuitions coming from? And when it comes to those intuitions and how we overcome that, I'd like you to consider having a whole brain conversation. The brain is cut into two hemispheres, the left and the right brain. And for those of you that already know this, if I were to ask you the left brain, what does the left brain do? Or what is it really, what's the left brain an expert in? Analysis, numbers, right? Logic, right? All of this, exactly right. You could almost think of it as the left brain being black and white. Black and white. Everything is either black or white. So very logical, data-driven, right? That's the idea. And if you almost want to think about this as a map of the United States, I'd like you to think of, what's out there on the East Coast? That's Wall Street. That's Wall Street, right? All the numbers and all that. So black and white. On the other side of the country here, we've got the West Coast. What would the right brain be doing then? If the left brain is logic and process, what's the right brain? Creative. Yeah, creative. This is where your emotions and songs and humor and all the great stuff in life comes from the right brain. And here we see, life is always full when it's in color. And if you think about it from the construct of our country, once again, this is like Hollywood, right? This is where the stories are all created and they can really soak you in with all those emotions that play across the big screen. So the right brain and the left brain. Now, here's where things get interesting. In our industry, what we often do? We lead with the left brain. We come out right away and we start showing people fact cards and brochures. And here, let me show you how all these numbers work. And what's interesting is we find that that's actually not how people's brains work when it comes to decision making. Instead, when it comes to decision making, what we find is that most people lead with the right brain. Emotions lead. And then logic closes the deal. Let me give you an example of this. A few years back, my wife wanted a new car. We came out here, and she was driving the old pickup truck around. She said, I can't drive the pickup truck anymore. I got to get a new car. I said, all right, let's go. So we go down there, and and I'm prepared, ready to go in there and do battle, on this new car. So we go down there, and the first thing that the salesman did, and these used car salesmen, these are some of the best in the world, these car salesmen. Aren't they good? First thing that they did, tossed her the keys. So let's go for a ride. Let's go for a ride. So she's driving, the salesman is there and riding shotgun, and I'm relegated to the back seat, right? So all of a sudden he starts in, he says, you smell that? That's real Napa leather. And I'm sitting there back there, I'm like, vinyl's easier to clean, stuff like that. And he turns the music up a little bit, probably to drown me out. He goes, you hear that? He goes, those are real Bose speakers. There's richness there, isn't it? And I said, don't worry, you don't need to worry. You got CDs, that sort of thing, Then all of a sudden he starts talking. He says, you know what? This car looks good on you. You look good in this car. I said, hey, now wait a minute, buddy. That's my wife now. Come on, take it easy. So what did he do? That entire process, what was he appealing to? The senses, the right brain, right? This is how it smells. This is how it sounds. This is how it looks. These are benefits. People don't buy red cars because it's red. They buy it because they think it looks fast or looks cool, right? Now, what happened next is where things get interesting. Because he knew, although he had her hooked, he had to deal with checkbook, right? So I go in there, and you know what he started doing at the end then? He started talking numbers. He said, here's what I'm going to be able to do off the MSRP, right? And here's what we're going to throw you in. And oh, by the way, if she wants to stop in every day of the week and get a free car wash, she can do that here. Free car washes for the life of the car. So, you know, we ended up signing the paperwork and walking out of there with a new car, right? But what he did is instructive for us. Lead with the right and then close with the left. You want to lead with emotions. That's what people respond to. And then close with the paperwork or the fact card. Too often, this is the opposite of how many of us present, right? Where we're showing people the paperwork because we're all from Wall Street. We all think people care about that stuff. It's not what people care about. So start with Hollywood and then end up on Wall Street. Okay, any questions on that full brain conversation or the benefits of it? Pretty interesting stuff, isn't it? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So when do you think that change happened? I mean, is that how it always was, like back in the 50s and 60s? Has it always been that way?
You know, sales processes were really developed over time. I mean, I'll give you another one, and you know, not to begrudge anybody that uses these techniques, but just a common one is fear selling. You know, where basically, you know, insurance salesmen of a generation ago would go in there, sit across the table, look, you know, dead in the husband's eyes, and say, "What happens if you were to die? Who takes care of these kids?" And while the concept is, you know, understandable, people don't like to feel like they're being, you know, sold on fear. Instead, what more recent research shows is that a more hopeful and uplifting message is actually a much better way to approach a sales conversation with people. And you can still get the same results, but it's about the feeling that you evoke with your clients at the end of the day. Do they feel like they were sold something, or is this somebody that's providing great insight and information and helps me make better decisions in my life? So it's always an evolution. Yeah, I'm sure in like 10 years they'll say, don't be no story selling, you know, just slip me cash. No, don't say that. No, don't make those jokes in our industry. Not supposed to be slipping cash to anybody. Okay, why it matters to be curious. As I told you, we traveled around the country and really interviewed some of the most successful advisors as to their approach. And when we did this, what we thought was that we were going to find a bunch of these, a bunch of, you know, the Shakespeares of their field. This is King Lear. We thought that these would be the most articulate and well put together people, and they'd be able to wax a story like you never heard before. You know what we're surprised to find is it's not really the Shakespeares of their field that were best at this. You know who the best ones were? Were people like this. You know, this is, I start feeling like I'm old when I get, and then people don't know who this is. Yeah, Columbo, Peter Falk, right? So Columbo is famous for all those TV specials. What did he say at the end? You know, each one of these detectives has their own hook. You know, what did he say? Do you remember what Columbo would say? What his thing was? Some of you are too young to remember Columbo. No, he would say, he basically asked some questions, and then as he was walking away, he would turn back and he'd say, just one more thing. Just one more thing. And in that one more thing, that one more question, he would then basically show that he knew exactly what was going on the whole time. And this is what we find to be one of the defining characteristics of the best advisors in the field, is that they're not like Shakespeare, they're more like Columbo. They've got this fanatical curiosity where they want to know everything they can, that again, to tie it back, would help them understand better where the client's intuitions are being generated from. So it reminds me though, when you think about, you know, being inquisitive and asking questions, I'm reminded of the scene in The Pink Panther. You guys ever seen The Pink Panther with Peter Sellers? He goes to check into a German inn at one point, and he comes up to the innkeeper. There's a dog laying out in front there, and he says, I want to pet your dog. Does your dog bite? And the innkeeper says, no, my dog does not bite. And so he goes down to pet the dog, and all of a sudden he almost gets his hand bit off. He said, what's going on here? I thought you said your dog doesn't bite. The innkeeper said, but that is not my dog. Right? So it's all about not just asking questions, but asking the right questions to get the responses that we're really looking for. So what I wanted to do is I want to provide you with the top 10 questions that top advisors ask. But before we do this, let me give you some of the things that this could potentially do. This will help you build trust, establish personal connections, discover their intuition or their gut feeling, and here are the rules. Because there's many questions that you can ask, but what we hope is that you'd be able to pivot from this starting list and start to create some of your own. When you do so, here would be some of the ground rules, what we call the curiosity rules. First, it's who they are, not what they have. It's who they are, not what they have. This really ties into that old saying, you know, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. This is, I think, really cut from that same cloth, right? Treat people as individuals, not as walking bank accounts that we're trying to conquer, right? Number two, a question is something you don't already know the answer to. It sounds kind of weird, right? I mean, say, wait a minute, Scott, what do you mean by this? Sometimes we ask leading questions to get people to kind of walk down the path on their own, and I get that, but be careful here because insincerity can really come across as cheap cologne sometimes. People can smell that a mile away if you're not being sincere. So make sure that when you ask questions, you're very sincere. It's not something that you don't already know the answer to. And lastly, why are we doing this? We're trying to dig for gold mines and also avoid landmines. You know, we're going to look at how some of these questions can do that potentially for you. Now, I wanted to save you some time. If you'd like me to, I can get you these top 10 questions in a laminated sheet, so you don't have to write them down and feel like you got to furiously write as I do this now. I would ask that in order to get that, though, that you follow up with AJ. I gave you his phone number at the beginning. Do me a favor, call and introduce yourself, and we'll get you that laminated card out to you with a couple of other goodies that you might want to order based on today's presentation. Fair enough? Okay, very good. All right, so let's get into these things. Number one, where are you from and what did you like about living there? And just getting people to open up. People love talking about themselves. Number two, outside of work, what consumes most of your time? Great answer to be able to know to tie back into reminding them later on, what are we doing all this for, right? So you can spend time with your grandkids at Disneyland, or you can go golfing, whatever the case might be. Number three, what was your first experience when you learned the actual value of money? Like we were talking about earlier. There's stories about kids in grocery stores as young as 2 years old when they get to checkout chanting, credit card, credit card. They don't know what the credit card really is yet, but already they understand that that represents value. It's a way to get things. Tell me about your life's work. Fascinating, especially in California. You never even know who you're sitting down with, right? Ex-drummer for Foghat, something like that, you know? So you got to make sure that you really dive into what they used to do. Number five, what is the best financial decision you've ever made? The best financial decision you've ever made. Number six, what principles do you follow with your money? You can see why that would be important, right? Number seven, are there any investments you would avoid as a matter of principle? Maybe things these days that have to do with gun companies and all that stuff. You get all sorts of people. Very popular these days are these ESG funds. ESG is short for environmental and social governance. It's just an approach to investing that says you're going to try to avoid a lot of those areas of conflict. So, and we've got an ESG fund that Invesco is one. Number eight, what do you want your money to do for you? This is a great one. I think probably one that you're already asking. One of the best you can ask. What is this money even for? That's really going to help us understand what we're supposed to do with it next. Number nine, what other people have you assumed some financial responsibility for? Number 10, what do you expect from an advisor? Like a lot of life, managing expectations is important. What are they expecting from you? Find that out early on so people are less likely to be disappointed. Make sense? All pretty common sense, like a lot of life. It's simple, but not easy, right? Okay, so we talked about the benefits of having a whole brain conversation. We talked about why it matters to be curious. Now, as promised, some great stories from the field, some great stories. First, let's look at an example of a great storyteller. You guys know the old Oracle of Omaha, right? Warren Buffett, maybe the most successful investor of all time. Really interesting. When you think about people that can really spin a tale, Warren Buffett is one of the best. He's just got a way of saying things very clearly to get people to understand what he's talking about. Let me give you an example. They asked Warren one time, they said, what types of companies do you look for when it comes to investing? You know what Warren said? He said, we look for undervalued companies with potential earnings catalysts and price to earnings and or price to book ratios below that of their peers, in addition to quality management. Man, that Warren Buffett. He is one articulate son of a gun, isn't he? Is that what Warren Buffett said? Is that how Warren Buffett talks? That's not how Warren Buffett talks, right? That's talking over people's head. That's not how you get to be a multi-billionaire. You know what Warren Buffett actually said when asked that same question? Here's what he really said. He said, we look for wonderful castles surrounded by deep, dangerous moats, where the leader inside is an honest and decent person. Man, here's my money, Warren. Go ahead and take it. I mean, does it much matter what he's about to invest in next? Don't some of your objections already melt away in terms of, oh, what sector are we going to get into or whatever? It doesn't matter, right? When this is your guiding principle, who can't look at that and say, I can get on board with that. I like your approach, Warren. Here's my money. Go double it, right? Warren Buffett, great story seller. You know another great story seller? This guy, Yogi Berra. This guy was really good. R.I.P. Yogi, R.I.P. They asked him one time, they said, Yogi, why should investors develop a financial plan? Here's what Yogi said. He said, well, because prudent investors who begin early can allocate aggressively and profit from compounded appreciation. What are you laughing at? You know Yogi?
Said deja vu all over again.
That's right, that's right. Yeah, Yogi never been known for all those, three-syllable words. You know what he said instead? He said, because if you don't know where you're going, you could wind up someplace else, right? Yogi Berra, a great example of a story seller. So here's the idea with this next portion. And anytime you think about developing your own, these should be simple, clear, repeatable stories. As I promised, these are easy enough, I would hope. If you like it, you can start implementing it right away. There's some really good stuff in here. Okay, let's go ahead and get into a couple then. You guys know that's Brett on his last vacation? Come on there. Unbelievable. I like the blue on you. The blue looks good. It's like my favorite color earlier. So this is the story of the Acapulco cliff diver. The Acapulco cliff diver. You ever hear this story? This is one of my favorites. I love this story. The story of the Acapulco cliff diver is basically there's two types of Acapulco cliff divers. There's the experienced and the one-timers. Here's what they find out is that what the one-timers do is they get to the edge of the rocks up above there and they look in the cove below as the water rushes in and back out to sea. And as the water rushes back in and then out again, they basically see the rhythm and they try to time their jump. And they wait until the water is all the way filled up so they've got the greatest sense of security, only to realize that by the time they make that leap of faith and complete their descent, the waters rush back out to sea again, and hence the term one-timers. Yeah. What the experienced cliff divers know is that when you get to the top of the rock and look over the edge, the actual optimal time to jump is when it looks rockiest below. If you're not picking up on my all too obvious analogy here already, this is the story of the stock market. How many people want to jump in when things are going great? Right now I'm ready. Like, no, this is the opposite of what you should be doing, right? The time to actually put your pedal to the metal is when things look a little scary. That's when opportunity is greatest. So don't be afraid, and you're going to see an opportunity here upcoming once again as we're 10 years in to a bull market. You're going to see an opportunity, as inevitably should have happened a couple times by now on average, a year where things are negative. And people are going to begin to question their investments, and they're going to begin to question you and the stock market all over again. Remember the story of the Acapulco cliff diver and let them know the time to actually stay vigilant is when things look rockiest. Acapulco cliff diver, one of my favorites. Had a good picture of Brett too. Okay, now this is simple. I like a lot of these stories because they're so darn easy. This is as easy as just having a yellow legal pad at the meeting. When you sit down with your client, draw a line and mark 0 through 10. And then hand them the pen and ask them, draw a line here on how confident you are, 0 to 10, that we're going to get you to your financial goals. What you want to do then is bring this piece of paper back again every time you meet and have them continue to mark on the paper each time after you meet where they now feel like they're at. And what you create now is a physical representation of the progress that you've made in their financial lives. Instead of them forgetting, how it felt when they were so desperate and destitute at the beginning when you first started working together, show them their own handwriting. This is where you were at when we began. I know you're feeling better now because you've shown me. And maybe we're not to a 10 yet, but my overall goal is to always make sure that we're making steps forward and we're addressing any sense that you're stepping backward. If they mark a line that's before the other one, dig deep, start asking questions. What's going on here? I wasn't expecting that slash mark, right? Help me understand. Why are you feeling not as confident as the last time you met? I thought we were making good progress. This is really easy stuff. Simple tools. Here's another simple one. This story is pretty straightforward. We're in Chicago. We're going up to the 96th floor. We're going to go have a drink and look over Lake Michigan. We got to get in the elevator. Which one would you rather get in? Huh? Why? Yeah, in case one snaps. You want more cables. The story of the two elevators really, again, goes back to this core principle of diversifying. We need to make sure that we've got stocks, bonds, and maybe a little bit of alternatives in your portfolio to make sure if anything happens to one area of the market, you've still got support. Story of the two elevators. All right, this one brings me back to when I was a kid. When I was a kid, we used to play outside. Remember when we used to play outside? That's what we used to do. We used to play baseball down at the end of the street. And there was a guy that had a corner house, Old Man Eggman, right there on the corner. And basically, we would be out there playing, and I could never really hit the ball. I was always pretty good at catching and throwing, but I could never hit that ball. Until one day, I got a hold of one. Man, I cracked it, went right through Old Man Eggman's plate glass window. Just like this, right? Now, you're sitting there, you're an old man, a little grumpy. You see a baseball come flying through your plate glass window. Give me some adjectives. You're already grunting. Give me some adjectives. What would be some adjectives to describe your feelings at that point? We keep it PG now. Keep it PG. Dang kids. Right? What else? Angry? Upset? Yeah. Oh, you're excited, right? Yeah, I like that. Maybe confused, like what just happened, maybe a little scared. All these emotions you can understand, no doubt about it. Now, what happened next, I think, is the most interesting part because it really showed Old Man Eggman's wisdom. Because when he went to replace that window, you know what he did? Instead of putting back a plate glass window, he put in a paned glass window. Old Man Eggman knew that he wouldn't be able to stop us kids from playing baseball. Well, I got stopped for about 2 months. I was grounded. But after that, I was back out again. And we were playing. He knew he wouldn't be able to stop us neighborhood kids from going out and having a good time. What he did want to do, though, was minimize his risk of that same situation happening again. Now, when a ball travels through, you're still going to have a lot of those same emotions, right? Not again. Them dang kids. What just happened? I can't believe it. But aren't all of those emotions just a little bit dampened from the heightened place they were when you knew they had a big $1,200 bill for the whole dang window? If you're picking up on the analogy again here, maybe it's already obvious. What we're talking about here is just simply diversifying across asset classes. This is why we have large companies, mid-sized companies, small companies. Why we have companies in the technology sector that really focus on growth But we also have companies that are more consumer staples that are not going to grow at the same pace, but really more those value names. It's the story of diversifying in a balanced portfolio. And it's an easy way to make the unknown known using the familiar. Everybody can relate to replacing the window. Okay, so today, in this presentation, we covered some good ground. We talked about the benefits of having a whole brain conversation. Remember, in an industry that's driven by Wall Street and all these numbers and charts and graphs, that's not how most people process information. They will make their sales decision by starting with their right brain, the emotions, and then justifying what they're feeling with logic. Your presentations should be a mirror image of that. Second, we talked about why it matters to be curious. The best advisors ask great questions. Great questions will help build trust, develop deeper relationships, and maybe most importantly, uncover where some of these gut feelings are coming from. So make sure that you're asking great questions. And lastly, I shared some great stories from the field with you. Easy ways, I promised you, to be able to implement some of those even this afternoon if the opportunity arose. These are just a sampling of some of the great stories that we have in this book. Now, this book is like, I don't know, $14.95 or something like that on Amazon. My pledge to you is if you drop a ticket here in this 2018, let's make it, well, how much do you think, Brett? How much should the ticket be? And we'll send them a free book. 50,000?
Sure.
Brett said sure. 50,000 will send you a story selling book on the house. Now, don't just one person make a trade for 50,000 and pass it around. That's, one way to do it. But you want your own copy. And then I can get it signed for you by Scott West, who's a friend of mine. Okay. So that's story selling, and just one example of how Investo puts a ton of resources into you all, the advisor. There's nothing here that basically, like I said, there's no product in this. Our consulting department exists solely to put together these programs to help you become a better communicator, a better advisor. And I've got a whole laundry list of these I can continue to bring to you through the coming months and years. We've got 22 programs in total. Not all of them are great. Not all of them would be appropriate. But I thought story selling would be a great way to start our friendship and give you a sampling for what we can do in that side of the business for you. You guys like that? Yeah. Okay, good. Any questions on this? Okay, so we'll we got 5 minutes for Q&A, and then maybe we'll take like a 5-minute break, and then we can reconvene. That time's flying when we're having this much fun. Time's flying. Any questions on anything? Yeah, please.
How do you get involved in Investo?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So I was traveling all over the country and been to all 50 states doing a different job, and then my dad passed away. And I had to stop traveling, come back home, take care of my grandpa, and I needed to find something local. At the time, it was Van Kampen, right? And they were in Oak Brook, Illinois. I'm from Joliet, Illinois. So it was like 30 miles down the road. My best friend from high school, he said, "Hey, come over here and work with me." He said, "You could do this. The markets are always changing, always challenging. You can help people, great intrinsic reward from helping people." So that's where I started, on the Van Kampen internal sales desk. I was just like AJ, hammering the phones, and I did that for 3 years, and I got promoted 7 years ago to take over Southern California. Yeah, thanks for asking. That's nice. Yeah, so I've been doing this for 10 years now, and I've been working with Primerica for the entirety. I know your system like the back of my hand. I've got some of my best friends in California from Primerica. So this is something hopefully you can rely on me. I'm not going anywhere, you guys. This is my dream job. Everybody's always asking me, like, when are you going into management? No, man, I'm not going to management. No, I got the best job. I get to come hang out with you, right? Break a little bread, have some fun. So I'll be here for the next 20 years. You're not going to be able to get rid of me. So you might as well start doing a bit more business. Right?
I have one more. What's your relationship with AJ? And you're not your boss, not his boss. I know he works out in Chicago. I'm talking. What's your relationship with him?
Yeah, so the internal is my business partner. While I don't hire AJ, I hired AJ. You know what I'm saying? So they put a bunch of candidates in front of me. I interview them because it's my partner. It's somebody you got to work with every day. Come together, have a morning phone call every day, hold each other accountable. And so so AJ, while I've got a role in that decision, I'm not as really direct. I can't fire him. I can make a phone call and be like, dude, this guy's got to go. But yeah, he's a very nice young man, and I'm really excited to be working with him. He's real smart. He came over in the Guggenheim acquisition, so he actually took a little bit of a step back to work with me. So I'm really proud to have him work. He was an ETF specialist before he took an internal role with me. And so I'm trying to do a good job of showing they made the right choice. Yeah, is he doing a good job for you? Yes, he is. Good. Give me any feedback anytime. Part of how we get better is by honest and open feedback. So if I ever say anything that sounds out of whack, or say, man, you said you're going to do this and you didn't do that, or AJ, man, you just had a bad attitude when I called the other day. Let us know, because I can't tell you we're dedicated to having great customer service and then slip. And small slips, I want to know about. Even if it's me, it's me nice. This guy gets some bad jokes. Okay, so let's take 5 then. You guys stretch your legs, use the restroom, and I'm going to check my phone, make sure any calls return. We'll reconvene. I got some good stuff for you coming up. All right?
Do things you want to show? You more PowerPoints or anything else? Not really. What I want to do next is hopefully get fired up about where to find some money. What I want to do is if you go type in California. You want me to do it? I can do it for you. That's the first part. That's good. That was your one. Yeah. So just building confidence. Yeah. Again, getting some product. Yeah, perfect. It's this it's kind of like mimicking. Yep, perfect. Give me that. Give me that. And you make the conversation. If there's anything else you want me to first, I can just tell them.
What's up, lady?
That was easy.
Yeah.
I had to have a paycheck coming in. Yeah, so we'll be closing one.
You know what?
You know what? It's actually there was an and our broker said, but I know
Yeah, but they're still really good.
Okay, I'll say you're enough for you. We had the guys that were talking about the stuff on 14. And then one of them was talking about this like, how are you doing? They're out. No, say what are you about?
We have to form, I don't know what it is.
So when
Is your cousin here? No, I haven't been there.
Yeah.
Hi, we're gone. Friendly to remember gone. We know what's he? No. I'm excited.
So next one is the beginning. So. Yeah, okay, Wednesday, yeah, Wednesday. Earlier, Tuesday, I was in. Monday, I'm going to
I need to confirm a couple things on that.
Okay, yeah.
Can I grab a water?
Of course. That's what I'm telling you. The question you gotta ask.
Exactly. That's what it is. Yeah. And that's what we do. At the end of the day, it's right. Yeah. And the biggest impact. And then you see how when you actually see the communication, you actually see that. It does. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So you get off at 11 or you got off at early?
No, I got up early. Yeah. But I got off and going downstairs in my car. I'm like, God, my keys. And I left them in the drawer. And it's an elevator to go up. And I'm like sore enough. I couldn't take the stairs. I'm like, I'm going to take 3 flights of stairs. Otherwise, I'd bring her like right on time.
Okay, you guys want to get back at it?
How do you paint? It could happen. Not if I paint it, but my wife got us to get purple.
Okay.
It says a purple hue.
Hey, what's the mention? Looks white to me. There you go. That's fire right there.
Okay, so when I come to spend time with you, I want to be multifaceted in terms of, the things that we talk about. And this next one is, what I want to do is I just want to show you where there's some money. Again, I think the best partnerships are those that, aren't just asking you to, send a bunch of business our way, but it helps you mine for business and find some opportunities. What I want to show you right now is something called the Warren Report. Have you ever heard of the Warren Report? Ever seen this before? A lot of my ideas are just Google ideas and stuff. You can just Google. And this is an example. Warren Report, California. I go ahead and I go there, and then we're going to go down to the second link here. Mouse isn't working up here, but
Uh-oh.
okay. So, click on the second link. This is the state of California. We're going to scroll down. Yep. It's going to get this going.
Is it working now?
Yeah, maybe.
There's to turn it on.
Oh, you know why?
Why?
Here. There, you're good. You went below. It'll work now. Because it's 2 screens.
Perfect.
Okay. Back next. Okay, very good. All right. Starting to sweat. Now you're making me sweat. Okay. All right, first link. Bingo. Okay, go ahead and scroll down. You can see they provide this information through a couple of different time periods. Here's 2017, 2018, and all these previous years. That's not really what we're looking for. What I like here is 2018, 2019. This is July 1st of last year, updated through basically 2 weeks ago, September 10th. Okay, so you click on this. Now, if a wholesaler came in here and showed you the future, would you give them all the business? I already know the answer to that. I already know the future. The answer is yes. Okay, so take a look at this. This is the Warren Report is a worker adjustment retraining notification. It's a federal law that requires advanced notification be given when businesses are facing mass layoffs or plant closures. Worker adjustment retraining notification. So here's what you see here. You got the notice date, the effective date when it's actually happening, the receive date when the employees found out, the company, the city, the county, how many are affected, and then what's going on. Okay, now, as you take a look, first place I would maybe scroll through is the company. You have clients already. Maybe they're working at one of these places where you can call them up and say, hey, look, I know that Sears is under pressure and they're letting some people go. First thing I want to know is, are you being affected by this? If you're okay, great. I'm glad to hear that. Second thing I'd like to know, though, anybody that you know being affected by this? Because this is where I really fancy myself an expert in caring for the community during these transition periods of life. You can also take a look at the different cities, right? As again, many of you, your businesses branch out much further than Valencia or whatever the case might be. So you can scroll through and you can see the cities where you may have opportunities. Now, here's where things get interesting. Take a look at this. As I scroll through, people take a look at this middle column, the effective date. And what you'll notice is that some of these dates have yet to occur. These are things that are happening in the future. Can you see the opportunity here? There's this line of logic that says you're not at your old job. Why is your 401k? And increasingly, people that get let go from their employers are being asked to now pay a quarterly or annual fee to keep those records. It used to be they want to keep your 401ks on the book so that they'd have scale. Now it represents administrative costs. And they're looking to offload that. They want you rolling into an IRA after you stop working there anymore. And this is a place where you can go to see exactly what's going to happen next. Look at some of these opportunities here. We just, just pick a lot of. Anybody see anything interesting? What county are we in? Is this still LA County? Yes. Yeah. So you can see there's all sorts of opportunities here coming up. It's Orchard Supply Company. I'm not sure what they do. They're in LA. 137 people, permanent closure. Now, not only is this great breeding ground to potentially find opportunities for rollovers, but can you see the other opportunity that might be here? For people that are going to be looking for jobs, looking for employment. Great opportunity to share with them the greatest opportunity going in America today, which is right here, America. Something that they can get started just part-time, maybe even tap into a bunch of their old friends that are looking to work. This is how you build a big base shop, right? Thinking about all the different hats that you wear. It's about accumulating assets, but also accumulating a great team. So, the Warner Report. You guys ever see that before? Yeah, so it's hopefully worth the 5 minutes it took me to show you. Yeah.
Is this something that the people that are actually managing the accounts, the Invesco accounts, that they use to identify when to pull funds from something, from one investment to another?
No, not really. Like these companies closing?
Yeah.
No, this would be something that would be, portfolio managers, keep in mind, they've got constant communication with C-suite executives as they do their due diligence on what companies to buy. So things like this would be, there'd be telltale signs for challenges at the corporate level well before they ever indicated to their employees that they're going to have to shut down shop. You'd be able to see, from all sorts of different business metrics, fundamentals, that the company was in trouble. Really good question. Okay, so what I wanted to do next was get into just a little bit in terms of, product and opportunity, I guess, when it comes to that. I brought some stuff, and hopefully I got enough. If not, I can always drop ship more, and we can share here too. But I had a couple of ideas of what I wanted to go through. You just tell me if you think it'd be useful. I was going to walk through just one portion of the equity and income brochure. You guys do a lot with equity and income.
Yep.
And so equity and income is that kind of, like I call it the mother-in-law fund. You can sell it to your mother-in-law and not worry about seeing her at Christmas. Hear that one? Okay, so this is the equity and income fund. And the reason I wanted to spend just a moment on this, and I know for some of you, this may be, old hat. This may be old hat. You're going to say, man, that old Scott, always with the equity and income fund. But there's a reason. There's a reason that this works so well. And then I'm going to come back and just spend a quick brief minute with you. You're welcome. My belief is that if you can get really good at this story, you are going to be able to close so much business. I'm telling you, this is ripe for the picking. The opportunity out there is immense. If you can get great at this one story that I'm going to show you, you're going to be able to really kill it. First, before we get into the one story here, what I'd like to do, love these Elmos, are so neat. Okay, let's just go through a couple brief things. The cover says a lot for this equity and income brochure. It says a lot because you can see the story here is basically told with the woman in the umbrella. She's protected from both UVA and UVB rays, as well as if it were to start to rain. It's this idea that this is an all-weather portfolio. As legend has it, it took 7 years to fight with lawyers to put that one word on the brochure, portfolio. Right? Because it's so much more than just one fund. In and of itself, it's a complete portfolio. As you open it up, there's a couple of stories in here. There's all-weather investing. You're going to want to own stocks for sunny seasons, bonds for chilly times. What do we try to do as experts? We try to help people invest with intention, not emotion. This is where people get it wrong. They let their emotions lead because they have no plan. And you can see the net effect of that is seen here in a very famous study, the Dalbar study. It shows the average equity investor the last 25 years experienced a return of a little less than 5%. The market did about 8%. What's the difference here? Why is there that gap? What Nick Murray says, that gap is you. Your ability to keep people invested, you are that 3% or so difference in people's lives every single year. And how do we make a difference? We do it down here by avoiding 3 investing mistakes. We're not going to chase last year's winners. We're not going to just own one thing. And we're going to not try to time the market. This is what losers do. Don't tell me I said that. Okay. 3 solid ones. Invest based on long-term performance, ignore short-term market movements, and rely on professionals to manage your money. Over here, you've got the results over the course of the last, this is 20 years. You can see that equity and income outpaces any other available option. It beats stocks. It beats bonds. It beats U.S. government bonds. How does it do it? It owns a little bit of each. Choosing the best and avoiding the rest is the story of professional money management. Down below here, you see some numbers. One I would call your attention to would be on the far right here, where you can see the inception date. This thing's been around now for 58 years, with or without sales charge, you guys, over 10% per year. This is where you can overcome upfront sales charge objections. I don't want to pay 5.5%, right? I was told not to pay an upfront sales charge. We'll take a look. Here's with max sales charge paid or with no sales charge at all. The difference over long periods of time end up being pennies on a dollar. I'm not worried about this small number to the right of the decimal. What I'm worried about is the big number to the left, because that's the number that plugs in to the rule of 72. And that's the one that dictates your long-term success. So you can see why 5.5 in the first year looks and means so much, because it is in the first year. But you're not going to own this just for 1 year. You're going to own this for your lifetime. So you're going to be able to spread that out over time, and you can see how the results really converge as we get longer in the tooth. The old jelly bean chart. You guys have seen this before, right? The market is filled with highs and lows. There's one path that's the most moderate. It doesn't feel like a roller coaster. It's equity and income. They're shown in gray. Never at the top, but also never at the bottom. And that's the point, right? We're going to smooth out the ride. Okay, next page here, you can see here is the genesis of that idea of it being a portfolio. You've got 7 different asset classes in one fund. This is where we talk about it being the millionaire's portfolio. Any millionaire I've ever known has a bunch of U.S. stocks in their portfolio. But then we're not just going to own, we're going to loan. So you got also U.S. corporate bonds, right? So you got stocks and bonds. If it's good enough to do here in the U.S., it's good enough to do around the world. So we've got international stocks, international bonds. You'd also have some safety in there, right? If the, you know what, it's the ceiling fan, we're going to want things like U.S. government bonds, the safest, most secure place to be when things look ugly. Any millionaire I've ever known always has a big wad of cash in their pocket, so we got some cash too. You see, in this one portfolio, we've got everything to meet your needs. And this is why, depending on your business model that you set up, anywhere from about $25,000 to $50,000, you would absolutely feel comfortable putting it into something like equity and income fund. Just because it's $50,000, you know, that's that first chunk that we need to start to build that base. So 25, 50,000, equity and income, absolutely appropriate because you get a little bit of everything. Okay, next thing is this mountain chart. Here's where I want to spend the bulk of our time on this particular story. If you can get good at this story, I'm telling you, you're going to close so much business because this addresses the age-old question for people, which is, am I going to lose my money, right? Or am I going to make money? Or are you going to lose me money, right? And basically the setup is just simply, if I could show you how you can make money, if the market goes up, down, or sideways, would you feel comfortable enough with me to open an account here today? You got to get good at trial closes in your presentation. Trial closes, just simply hold them accountable, right? If I were to show you how you can make money potentially, if the market goes up, down, or sideways, would you feel confident enough to open an account with me here today? If they say no, don't go any further. You're in the wrong house, right? You got to get that mental buy-in where if you lay out a killer presentation that they're going to sign on the proverbial dotted line when you're done. Trial close, take their temperature before you even begin this story. And then you know at the end of the story, if they say no, it means your story needs to get better. You've identified the exact point that you're losing people off the logic train. Okay, so let's begin. This fund, as I mentioned, goes back to 1960, so that's where our story is going to begin. We're going to work with this, you see this purple line down here at the bottom? This purple line at the bottom, it represents the value of the Dow at the end of each year. So that's kind of interesting in and of itself. You know, if they're, depending on how old your prospect is that you're sitting with or client, you can go back in time. I was born in '79. So if you go to '79, you can see the market was at 839. The Dow Jones today is at almost 26,000. So pretty interesting, right? How the whole thing grows. But in 1979, the Dow was just at 839. And now you know how old I am too. Okay, so we're going to see that purple line at the bottom. Now we're going to work 2 lines up from that. 2 lines up from that. It said value at the end of the year. Everybody see this? Everybody with me? Okay, the reason that we're going to work with this line is because this is with dividends reinvested. Of course, if you're working age, you're already making income from your job. You don't need to take income off of your investments. Why steal from your investments? You got a job, right? So we're always, you know, barring some extraordinary circumstance, always going to recommend dividends be set up to reinvest and cap gains be set up to reinvest. The name of the game when it comes to wealth creation is share accumulation. Write that down. Share accumulation is the key to wealth creation. If you can get this concept across to your clients, you're going to save yourself so much trouble when down markets come. Because the average layperson will look at the dollar amount on their statement. Oh, I had 20,000 last month. Now I only got 17. You got to get me out of this thing, right? No. This is what rookies do. They watch the dollars go up and down. You know what the professionals do? They look at the shares on their statement. And your shares will never, ever go backwards. You will never lose shares. And as a matter of fact, if you've got it set up for dividends and cap gains to be reinvested, your shares are going to be accumulating month over month. And if the market were to take a dip, that's good news for you because now you're buying more at a cheaper cost. Share accumulation is the key to wealth creation. Get that idea across to your clients, and I'm telling you, you're going to start to reprogram their brain when the market goes down because it's a short-term sale. You know, our society is unbelievable at recognizing bargains. We are a bargain shopper society, aren't we? Have you seen this show now on coupon clipping?
Yeah.
They got this whole show on coupon clipping, right? People walking out of the store with like 100 bottles of mustard. Like, what are you gonna do with all that mustard, right? But they got it for free. They got it for free. Or they got a penny per bottle back for each one they bought. So they go down, they warehouse all this mustard. People love a deal everywhere except the market. The market goes on sale. People want to run the other direction. What if I told you that Nordstrom only has 2 sales a year, and I told you, hey, there's one of these sales here, it's at the end of the year, go down there. He said, no, I can't buy that stuff. It's cheaper than when I saw it last time. I gotta wait till it gets back up to full price. Then I'll feel really good about those clothes. Right? We laugh because we know how stupid that is. But this is exactly how people act when it comes to the stock market. So breaking those habits is key to your long-term success. And hopefully this story will help you do it. Okay, so value at the end of the year, 2 lines up. That's where we're working. That's with dividends reinvested. And our story begins where the shading begins, 1966. Go ahead and take your pen or your finger and draw a line up to the flag. You can see it says 1966. Oh, I'm sorry, dear. That's okay. Don't apologize. It's all good. Breathe in. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, 1966. It says Dow closes above 1,000 for the first time ever. A big moment in the market's history. It had never been there before. This was big, right? This was big. So 1,000 in 1966. Okay, now take your finger and drag it until where the shading ends. This time, go up, find the flag. You should hit 1982 if you've done it correctly. Everybody with me? It says Dow closes above 1,000. This time, never looking back. So from 1966 to 1982, the market went from 1,000 to 1,000. Isn't that amazing? 16 years. And the market was basically, as it says here, flat. Imagine if I come back in 16 years. I'm all fat and bald, and I got, I'm walking around with a cane, right? And I say the Dow's still at 26,000. I say, what? You guys picked the wrong job, right? I knew that Prime America thing wasn't going to work out. First of all, it's Prime America. Don't get it wrong. Second of all, let me show you how wrong that was. Because look what your money did. In 1966, you had $16,000. By the end of 1981, you got $58,000. You tripled your money in an environment where a lot of people would tell you, you can't make a buck. This is, again, the story of active management. Finding the opportunities in tough markets. That's what your index would have done for 16 years. Nothing. Right? And that's not to say it went above 1,000, but it would always go back down below 1,000 again. It never permanently broke out over 1,000 until 1982. So this is called our 3P presentation. Our first P is persevere. In a flat market, the equity and income fund will persevere. That's Persevere. I would see people write half the word and then stop, so I just started spelling it. Persevere. Persevere in a flat market. Everybody with me? Any questions? Okay, moving right along. So that's a flat market. Next type of market that we might encounter is an up market, right? Market goes up, we call that a bull market. You know why we call it a bull market, by the way? Because when a bull kills, it thrusts upward with its horns. So an up market is called a bull market. A bear market is a market that goes down, called that because when a bear kills, it strikes down with its paws. Up is a bull, down is a bear. Either way, you get killed. No, don't tell your clients that. Don't tell your clients. Bull market, okay. So bull market. So we know we started the decade, or excuse me, 1982, we're at 1,000. Go ahead and take your finger and go to where the shading, I guess you'd say, begins again. Go up and find the flag. If you've done it correctly, you should be looking at 1999. Dow closes above 10,000 for the very first time. Above 10,000 for the very first time. So here, the last 16 or so years, we went basically from 1,000 to 1,000. Good. Went from 1,000 to 1,000. It's amazing the way numbers work out. It's like the same 16 or so years, only this time, tenfold increase. 1,000 to 10,000. You kidding me? It was a great run. So that's an up market. Let's see what your money would have done. In 1981, we had 58,000. By the end of 1999, we have 750,000. 750,000. Now, it's got one question for you, Mrs. Prospect. If I take your 58,000 and turn it into 753, you cool with that? There's not a single person that's going to tell you no. Our second P is the equity and income fund in an up market will participate. We will absolutely participate. We will not be left behind. We're going to participate. What makes this interesting, of course, and I didn't do a good job probably on the previous page, this is not a 100% equity portfolio, you guys. This is just a portfolio that's about 60% or so equity, 60, 65% stocks, 35, 40% bonds. For it to participate to this level, to keep up with a ripping stock market with less volatility, you can see why this is the best-selling fund in Primerica's history. The entire company has never sold more of a fund than equity and income. Hopefully you're starting to see why. And I know you guys sell a lot of this too, so this is not all foreign to you. Thanks for your support on this. Okay, so flat market, we persevere. Up market, we participate. There's one last market, though, that we could experience. That's a down market, right? When the market goes down, call that a bear market, as we discussed. So we started the decade at 10,000. By the end, again, follow the shading here, and you can see that by the end of 2008, or if you go up and find the flag, it says the Dow closes at 8,766. So we started the decade, the millennium, at 10,000. By the end of 08, we're down 8,766. Let's see what your money would have done. You had 753,000 last we left off. By the end of 08, you became a millionaire. You became a millionaire during one of the most difficult investment stretches in our nation's history. Because keep in mind, this is a story about more than just 08. 2000, 2001, 2002 were all down years in the market. And again in 08. So you got 4 out of 9 years that were down. Boy, what a contrast to where we're at here now, 10 years in a row up, right? But here's a stretch, basically every other year I'd have 4 out of 9 years down. And what's your money doing? It's growing. This is our third P, the equity and income fund will protect. In a down market, we're going to do a real good job. And I think they can make the argument we're actually doing a little bit better than protect. They actually help you make money. Keep in mind, 2000 was down because of Y2K. Then 01, unfortunately, we had September 11th, which led right into the recession that lasted into 02. We didn't start to come out of it until 03. Okay, so the 3P presentation: persevere, participate, protect. Sideways, up, down. The way that I pivot off of this story is to say something along the lines of, if you could have just seen through the fog and uncertainty that 2008 would have had you believing in, the media telling you that the end was near, if you just would have held on, take a look at how much you would have had last Christmas to buy presents with. 2.7. Well, we actually just went through, and only over the course of time will we be able to see how the story is written. Right? It's amazing for me to see each year tacked onto this thing in the story. But what we look back now and start to see pretty clearly is this is one of the greatest wealth creation opportunities of our lifetime, was 08. But not if you were heading the wrong direction, not if you weren't getting great advice. You went into the bunker and maybe you still haven't come out, right? The truth be told, it was an opportunity to nearly triple your money. Where were you at? Who were you working with? Were you along for the ride? So, If you take a look at this, couple last things on this particular story, I think it's interesting to look at the other blue boxes as they are all filled with stories of peril. MLK assassinated, Nixon resigns, you know, Gulf War. There's always a crisis in our society. Geopolitical, financial, political, whatever the case is. There's always a reason not to invest. And if you live long enough, you could actually pull yourself back into, you know, like the Gulf War. Like, remember what it looked like when we invaded those, you know, Scud missiles ripping across CNN. But when you dive too deep into any one story, what you start to forget about is what's behind this. Look at the big blue mountain that's behind the entire story. To think that the big blue mountain is going to crash into the sea because of one of these little blue boxes, it's just not the way it works. Right? The big blue mountain will always chug higher. You just got to stay focused on the long term. Okay, so that's the mountain chart. That's that one story in equity and income. I promise you, if you can get good at that story, you're going to close so much business because it really builds confidence that no matter what happens, we'll be prepared. Okay, any questions on that? Okay.
You have a question?
Yeah, please. It's always more fun.
So the strategy there is dollar cost averaging. Is it, that's why we're in line with Invesco as a primary partnership?
On that mountain chart?
Yeah.
So that mountain chart was just simply $10,000 invested one time. You want to see a story of dollar cost averaging? Open your brochure back up. Really good question. Thank you. Dollar cost averaging is probably the most powerful tool that the average investor has at their disposal to gain vast amounts of wealth. You stay consistent when the market does not. And that story is found on page 12. The setup here is you got three families. Okay, real quick setup here. The worst 2-year time frame in our market's history, still to this day, is from 72 to 74. It's a little fun fact for you, right? Because if you ask a lot of people, hey, what's the worst 2-year stretch in our market's history? People go back to like the Great Depression. Like, oh, you know what? Great Depression was like 33 by 34 back out, and we went down again. But no, that's not it. 2008, I bet that was it. No, you know, that was horrible. It was really bad. But by like March of 09, we were back on the come up again. The worst prolonged 24-month stretch, 72 to 74. And you can start to see why people get beat up with emotion over time. You talk about 24 months of your money going down. I mean, you're calling touching base every month or every quarter, right? That's like 8 quarterly check-ins where you're telling them, just hold on. At a certain point, people start to give up. They start to throw in the towel, right? Feel like it's not going to work for them. So we thought it'd be useful to look at this time frame specifically to see how your decision making can really lead to future results. So each of these families, the Stevens, the Ryans, the Andrews, they put $10,000 into the equity and income fund. And the S&P proceeds over the next 2 years to fall almost a little bit more than 38%. So instead of 10,000 in your account, you don't have 10,000, you have like 7,000. So you meet with them now, second annual review. You call in, now you're meeting 2 times each year, you know, and then here's what the conversation goes up. Stephen say, listen, man, I gotta go. I gotta go. I gave you the money, we sat, we waited as long as we could, we gotta play it safe. They take the money back out and take that 69.5, put it in the bank. You can see over the course of time, CD rates, whatever they stuck it in there at the bank, you know, 2% average return. So they end up actually ending up doubling their money. You know, they end up with like 24,000. Pretty good. Better than nothing, I guess. But there are better decisions you can make. Take a look at what the Ryans did. The Ryans said, hey, look, we gave you this money for the specific purpose of retirement. We don't need it. We got an emergency account set up. We're going to let it ride. We're not feeling good, but we're going to let it go. And so that's what they did. They basically stayed put. They hold. And you can see as the fund reverts to its long-term performance of 10% per year, it's amazing how compounding interest works. 10,000 turns into almost 800. Amazing. But there's one investment or one decision that's best of all, and it's what you were talking about, my friend. It's when they basically step up to the plate and they say, you know what? Not only are we going to keep what we gave you in place, but we're doing some reading, we're staying into, and we think that we're actually coming out of this thing. We think that things are actually starting to look better. We want to start adding each month. We think it's on sale right now, and we want to start buying the sale. So every single month, they give you $100. In truth, you can see even $100 a month. It's amazing the way it adds up. They gave you much more than $10,000. In total, they gave you what's called 62 Gs over the course of their lifetime. But look at the difference in their portfolio. And it's amazing, again, the way numbers work out. It's almost exactly $1 million difference. What I want you to do is, if you want to mark this up, if that's like your office copy, write in there, PAC mistake. This is $1 million PAC mistake. If you ever have anybody that's got a PAC or PAC Plus put in place, and they come to you and they say, hey, we can't but keep going. This is when you pull the story out. Don't let them make the mistake. Said another way, think about it. If I had big garbage bags filled with $100 bills, huge garbage bags, right? 10 of them. And in each one filled with the hundreds, each one was $100,000. I got 10 of them up here with me in the front of the room. 10 garbage bags, big garbage bags, with $100,000 each, $1 million in total. And these are yours. These are all yours. The only thing you have to do to get these bags is buy them from me. $100 a month without ever stopping. If you promise to give me $100 a month without ever stopping, this $1 million is yours. I mean, who would say no to that, right? When you put that visual behind it, too often people don't think like that. That's your job, is to create these illustrations in their mind so that they really understand and feel conviction about their dollar cost averaging process. Because that's where people fall off the wagon, is when they feel like they're not doing the right thing or it's not working. It will absolutely work. Remember the story of the Ryans, the Stevens, and the Andrews. Good question. Plus, you let me cover another page. So that's good too. Okay. Any questions on anything? Oh, yeah, thanks for asking. If I ever say anything that you don't know, make me define it. PAC is pre-authorized checking. In a PAC. So a PAC you set up, and basically right from their paycheck, pre-authorized checking, slip out of their account so they can add at Invesco as little as $25 per month. But $100 a month is kind of like what you want to set as an expectation, if the family can handle that. And then a PAC Plus is just simply a mechanism for increasing that every, I think you can do it every year. Every year.
You do it anytime you want, every
You do it
quarter.
anytime. But that's the idea. Is $100 this year is not the same as $100 in 5 years. In 5 years, you should be kicking like $150. Just as an example. Yes, please. Thanks for asking, by the way. Yeah, make sure you're asking questions, because a lot of stuff I think PAC, and then I'm like, I got to show somebody in PFS on PAC. That's awesome.
When you were doing the mountain chart, you were saying that key to success is share accumulation. During 1966 and 1982, when the market was basically the same, you showed us that mountain chart grew, even though the market stayed the same. During that 16-year period, did the mutual fund continue to pay dividend and capital each year? So we made additional shares.
Yeah. Yep. And the equity and income fund pays dividends right now. It's a little bit less than 2%, and it pays quarterly. Mm-hmm. And cap gains, things like the growth of the fund, are not always guaranteed each year. So each year will be potentially different from the cap gains perspective. So that's nothing's guaranteed. Right. But cap gains, kind of like less guaranteed, because that means that the fund's making money every year, and so redistributing that. But dividends are coming from the securities held within the portfolio. That bond component is kicking off income, and so that's a more predictable element of your portfolio than cap gains, dividends. So, yeah, really good question. Yes, please.
I have a question. This is obvious for people that have $25,000 to be able to invest.
Yeah.
Does Invesco have a kind of like something else that that people can get into to accumulate some of their wealth before they can step into this? Is there something that if you were speaking to somebody and they had like $10,000, is there a way that you capture that audience prior to them having 25,000?
Yeah, so let me make sure I understand what you're
Stop.
saying correctly.
She's thinking this is a managed account and this is an actual
So,
mutual
so your
fund.
minimum in this is a $25 pack, $250 in an IRA, or $1,000 in a non-qualified account.
Okay, so
So just because you're at 10,000 does not preclude you from being able to open up an equity and income position. It's unlike managed accounts in that regard, that you have to have 25 Gs for managed accounts.
okay, so just as a clarification, it's $25.
$25 per month with a pack. So you can do it. That's unique, by the way, you guys, in case you didn't know that. We're the only company that does 25, which we think is a big advantage. You know, people have to get serious about it, but it's a great door opener. Hey, just 25. Let's get started here. So that's good. So 25 per month,
Okay.
250 in your IRA or qualified account is basically what we're talking about there. And then $1,000 minimum to establish a position in a non-qualified account. Something like, you know, outside your IRA, like pull money from your checking account. Hey, I like this. Hey, I got money in my checking. Here, 1,000 will open it.
Okay.
Or $25 per month to set up.
So it's but it's not just $25 a month, it's $1,000 to open the account,
No, it could be as little as just $25 per month, as long as they set up that pack.
as long as it's a pack. If there's no pack set up, then it's a minimum of 1,000, is that correct? Okay. And then, but it's not, the $25 plus a $250 contribution in IRA, it's one, I mean, it can be both or one or the other.
Right. What we're basically just saying is, you know, not everybody's got the money maybe to start right away. If you're willing to put yourself on a plan to get there eventually, we'll work with you. And we're not here only for the you know, hoity-toity folks. You know, we want to make sure that we're working with everybody because everybody needs our help.
And then what's the percentage of completion on this?
Yeah, so 5.5%. So let me cover this real quick. Can we go back to the computer real quick?
Yeah.
Please and thank you. So like Costco, you've got the ability to lessen your cost for ketchup the more bottles of ketchup you get, right? So you got break points in place, thank you. And then I'll just grab the keyboard from you. Okay. So what I'm gonna walk you through right now are Invesco's break points, but I want to give you a story. You're like, man, why is he going through all this trouble with just for break points? I get how that works. I'm going to show you an angle on Invesco's break points that's absolutely killer when it comes to you guys being able to gather more assets for yourselves. Okay. Come on, baby. All right. Here we go. All right. So while I'm bringing this up, the concept of breakpoints, just to make sure we're doing a level set here, is that below a certain threshold, 50,000 in this case, you pay the most sales charge possible, 5.5%. As you get to more, let's see if I've got something. Sorry, I'm trying to think and talk at the same time. I'm trying to find out where I can best find this for you. Okay, so 50,000, it's 5.5. At 50, excuse me, below 50,000, 5.5. At 50,000, 4.5. At 100,000, 3.5. And it continues to go down from there. Looks like the website's working on this. That's always good. Yeah, so basically it's just tiered, right? And then all the way to $1 million, where you get NAV privileges. You pay no upfront sales charge. This isn't helping me either. Okay. So I can get you this information. And I think, what do you have, like a sheet on it or something you're showing? But here's where I want you to go with this. So the Costco concept, you bring me more dollars, I'll charge you less in sales charge. 5.5% is the most, and you can whittle that down until you get to $1 million, and there's no upfront sales charge. Okay, here's where I want to go, and I think this is the more compelling part of the story. We do something completely unique with our breakpoint, something that no other company does. typically, this is how the industry works. You can share your breakpoints with your spouse. Right? That's a good idea if you want to sleep in bed at night, right? So your spouse can share in your breakpoints, and then kids 21 or under that live at home. This is how every other company operates. I always think this is kind of comical because you think about these kids living at home, you know, like under the age of 21. Are they helping you get to like your $100,000 breakpoint? Like these kids aren't contributing. These are takers, not givers, right? Okay, so you think about this, and this is how every other company works. Now here's how we do it. Think about it up the ladder. We offer your breakpoints to be extended to your parents and grandparents. Let's pause real quick there. You're working with somebody, they got like $25,000. Say, hey, great, this is a great start. Equity and income is a great fund to go with. Hey, by the way, if you happen to, have like your dad or your granddad or your mom or your grandma be willing or able to invest, like let's just say another $25,000 alongside you, we can save you on upfront sales charge. 5.5 goes down to 4.5. What do you think? God bless you. I saw you lift out of your chair there. So you got an opportunity to have other people go and prospect for you. This is a Nick Murray concept called WIFM. What's in it for me? Right? People are very self-interested. If it comes down to them paying less on their investment, wait a minute, so the only thing I got to do to move from 5.5 to 4.5 is get granddad to kick in another little piece alongside me to get me to 50 G's? Give me 48 hours. I got to make some phone calls, right? This is how you get terminal velocity in your business when other people are going around talking about your business. Parents, grandparents. Now, let's go down the ladder. Kids, grandkids. Regardless of age, regardless of where they reside. This is really powerful for older folks, right? As we get older, you start to see your own mortality there at the end of the road, and you start to think about things like your grandkids, right? 529s and all these ways that it can help with the future generations. It's a very compelling subject. But with their investments, there's no way for them to basically help until now. Hey, you've had a tremendous investing career. You've got $500,000 with Franklin. I should be using the F word in my presentations, but I did on that, right? So you got $500,000 with this other company. Now that's all well and good, but look, these folks won't recognize your kids and grandkids as being part of your family, or at least to the extent, recognize your family, but they won't give them any benefit. Let's roll this money over to Invesco because your kids and your grandkids can now invest like they've got $500,000. Now make me show you a hypo on how much saving upfront sales charge for a young person, like 20 years old, starting at the $500,000 breakpoint. This is huge. This is huge. And it gives you really compelling information that's not available with their current investment company. Okay, so parents, grandparents, kids, grandkids. Now go to the left, you've got step relations, step kids, step parents. I'm not done yet. You go to the other side, siblings. Siblings, you guys. This is wild, right? This is really wild, particularly when you think about where our population is going, right? People are getting older. Unfortunately, many people, it's the golden age of our society, now entering Social Security age. We're all going to deal with loss of parents here, if you haven't already. So you think about the inevitable inheritance of wealth that's going to be happening. I'll just set up a scenario because I drive around all day. I just dream up these scenarios. But here, maybe you can take like a little grain of truth here and maybe connect it to your own book. Let's say, stay awake for this one, so be good. Okay, let's say mom dies, leaves $1 million behind, 3 kids, Peter, Paul, and Mary. Each of them get $333,000 apiece. Now, none of them are individually millionaires, which means if they take this money anywhere, right? Merrill Lynch, Raymond James, Edward Jones, you take it anywhere, and they're going to charge you max till. Because again, it's just you're one person with 333. You plug that into the break points, by the way, at 250,000, it goes down to 2.5%. 5.5, 4.5, 3.5, at 250, it's 250. Okay? Follow me? Now, here's what I'm proposing. Come work with me. One of my favorite lines, go ahead and write this down. If you and your family would be willing to work together on your investments, if you and your family would be willing to work together on your investments, I'd like to show you a way that we could lower the cost for all of you. If you and your family would be willing to work together on your investments, I can show you how we can save on costs for all of you. And this is with complete confidentiality. They're not getting, Brother Joe's statement or anything like that. It's all, compartmentalized. It's a common concern I think people have. Oh, we got to share, and then, sister's going to know how much money I get. No, none of that. But if you're willing to work together, we can basically, 333 individually is going to get you nowhere, right? We bring you together like Voltron. You're bigger than before, right? You're $1 million investor, which means you can put this $333,000 to work and no upfront sales charge. And it also means any future investments you make would go in at no upfront sales charge. Now, I'm not saying that we got to give the shop away to everybody, right? We got great lineup of products and solutions for folks so we get to know their needs. But if you're in there competing, if you're in there mixing it up, this is a great, bullet to have. I shouldn't be using gun analogies, but you know what I mean. But it's a great strategy to have at your disposal if you know how to use it. Because what's going to happen next? They sell their home, they sell their business, they inherit more money. Where do you think they're going to take it? They're going to bring it to the person that treated them like a millionaire way before they ever had it, $1 million. So this is something really unique at Invesco that I think you can leverage the heck out of to build your book of business. Yes, please.
I love this, but I do have a question. You just made a statement that there are no upfront sales charge. Does that mean that there are other sales charges that they're going to incur besides?
Well, yeah. So every year you've got an annual expense ratio.
Right.
So in the example of the equity and income fund, your expense ratio on the A share is about 80 basis points, 0.80, or said another way for people to understand, on a $100 bill, 80 cents a year for the manager. And you're going to have internal expenses on anything you do, and so that's that's how people get paid to go to war for you, right? So the operating expense for any investment is a kind of a fixed cost. It's not always the same amount, obviously, but the variable cost component is your upfront sales charge. And so that's a way to overcome upfront sales charge objections. And it's all about balance in the business, right? I mean, that's one of the great things about the organization that you guys have built here in this base shop is that we run a really balanced business, right? We've got a methodology for smaller folks that have a little bit less to work with just to get started. And then we've got a great approach for people that have more significant wealth. And so just being able to run a balanced business and knowing about all the different tools at your disposal, I think, is a big part of the puzzle. So hopefully I'm not like muddying the waters on how the breakpoints work, but I'm just thinking about ways for you guys and gals on how we can get in there and compete. Just show me how to compete.
Can you take about 10 minutes and go through the power shares kind of philosophy and stuff like that so people have a clear picture of that?
Yeah. Okay, so we work together in a lot of different capacities, and again, I'm so grateful for that support. It means a lot to me with family. I mentioned I got a little 2-year-old at home. Yeah, she hasn't eaten in like a week or so, so I mean, I don't know if you got to hopper, it's there. I got a 3-year-old. I mean, I'm gonna run a little light here. Maybe. Oh no! Look at this. Maybe perfect. Look at this. Perfect.
Oh, that just happened.
Oh wow! That just happened. Okay. So she hasn't had a diaper change in months. I'm just kidding, though. But thanks for the support. It means a lot to everybody at Invesco, including me. The managed accounts offering is the power shares. lineup. Now, what I want you to know is that they killed the PowerShares name. PowerShares is dead. We bought Guggenheim's ETFs earlier this year. They took that as an opportunity to do some kind of brand, what's the word I'm looking for? Brand rationalization, where they decided that, you know what, it's just too confusing. Everything should be Invesco. So all of our ETFs are now Invesco ETFs. All the funds are Invesco funds. And hopefully that's easier for your clients to understand. PowerShares was a pretty reputable name, but just know that when you see PowerShares in here, the brochure is a little dated. That's why it's like, but it just happens. It just happens. You're not looking at real old material, but that's the idea. Okay, so when you look at the left-hand side of the first page, that the green element right there, what I'd like you to pay attention to is the third section, why Invesco for managed accounts. This is the genesis of my entire managed account presentation as to why choose us versus other available models in your system. The first is that we're strategic in our approach, not tactical. You know, everybody's got a good story on these managed accounts. They all got a good story because they're all salespeople, so they're all going to think about their angles. And what I would ask you to do is consider a strategic money manager as being for your clients' most serious long-term dollars. Strategy implies that we're in it for the long haul, that we got a long-term plan, long-term goal. Tactical, you know, tactics, just by, you know, the word kind of implies what they're trying to do. They're trying to be more, you know, like short-term, like tactics, like, okay, you know, let's put a little bit of, you know, bet on Amazon here, and then let's take it off. This really runs counter to what we've been teaching people for decades at Primerica, which is that, it was in the equity and income brochure, ignore short-term market movements. You don't try to time the market. Think about the example of, you know, this last presidential election. If you went to bed that night, you saw in the lower right-hand corner Dow down, you know, 400, 500, 600, 700. If you woke up in the morning and you had a certain system in place, like Dow drops by more than 500 points, we got to start pulling money off the table. We got to go into less risk, right? Market's going down. Only to find that by the end of that first trading day, the market did not end up 700, 800 points down. It ended up 300. You can see how hard it is to, in the short run, try to figure out this game of financial markets. I mean, it's just not often as easy as reading the tea leaves. A lot of times things happen in the exact opposite way that the so-called experts are going to tell you that it's going to happen. And again, look at this run that we've been on. It's been 10 years. How many voices in the media have told you over the last 10 years that it's going to be coming to a stop here soon? Can't keep going. Yet here we are 10 years later. So a strategic money manager always takes the long view. A given quarter, a given year might not work out the way that you want, but if you got that long vision, our belief is that a strategic approach will win out over somebody trying to take chips on and off the table. So at Primerica, they segmented the model managers into two categories, strategic and tactical. We are of the strategic cut, and it may be appropriate to pair us in portion with a tactical manager. If you want to do that, you know, I could see maybe why that argument, you know, 80-20, something like that. But I'm telling you, that tactical piece is for like you're farting around, you know, gambling money. Strategic, long-term, serious money. That's where we operate. Second bullet point, PowerShares now. It's Invesco, exchange-traded funds. You guys can't sell ETFs at Primerica right now. The only way that you can put yourself in the position to talk about one of the most liked investment wrappers in today's society is to get your Series 65 and be able to talk about these portfolios. We utilize all ETFs in these models. And here's why that's important. When it comes to a managed account, there's a lot of people that need to get paid, right? You got TD Ameritrade in there. They're the record keeper. They're taking 10 basis points. You got Primerica in there. They're taking depending on how much you invest, about 42 basis points. That can be reduced again, like kind of like Costco, but it can come down a little from there. You also have your fee in a fee-based account. By the way, quick side note here. Did you know that you should never use the word fee? People hate the word fee. Instead, you should talk about costs. You think about fees in today's society, you've got baggage fees and ATM fees and government and regulatory. Fee implies that you're just getting taxed or it's a toll, that you're not getting value. Cost implies there's value to be had. There's a cost to doing business. You can't get something of value for nothing. So try to eliminate the word fee and replace it with cost. When it comes to your fee-based accounts, and again, some of this language is baked into the pie. You're not going to be able to completely eradicate the word. It's going to be on some of your literature. But the idea here is that you be wiser about how you enter into the conversation. When they ask, hey, what do you charge here? You start off that conversation by saying, what you pay matters to us, and I want to be straightforward with you regarding the costs of this plan, right? And eventually, again, you might hit that word fee, but they'll always anchor back to the word cost. Oh, this is the part of the conversation we're talking about the cost, okay? When it comes to fee-based account, the way that you want to wordsmith that is a fixed percentage account is preferred. Fixed percentage account. What does fixed percentage imply? It's not going to change. There's some consistency there. When I tell you that you're just paying me 1% per year, that 1% is never going to change. It's 1% for your assets under management every single year. And this is where a lot of my advisors kind of metaphorically get to the other side of the table with the client and then talk about their interests being aligned. That's why I think you might like this sort of account, because it's in my best interest to have your portfolio grow. If your portfolio grows, that 1% is worth more. If it doesn't grow, then we're both taking a pay cut, sort of thing, right? So fixed percentage account, not fee-based account. Okay, I was off on a little bit of a tangent there. Let's get back to the ETFs and why that's important in a fixed percentage account, because there's a lot of people that need to get paid. You, TD Ameritrade, PFS. You also have these managers that are charging a manager fee. Morningstar is not doing this. They don't work at Red Cross during the day and Morningstar at night. This isn't a volunteer force. They're charging your clients 25 basis points to be the manager if you choose that model. It's why ETFs are so stinking important in this particular account type more than any other. Because when we need to manage costs, ETFs are much more cost effective than mutual funds. And I have both. I mean, I'm not here telling you that like one's better than the other. I'm trying to hopefully get across the message that it's always a combination, balance, not either or, but and. How do we use all of these tools at our disposal? In a fixed percentage account, though, ETFs are important because you've got to keep these costs in check. When you're already baking in a lot of these other layers, the investment component needs to be as minimal as possible. And our portfolios lead the way in many instances. On average, and it's in the, if you go to page, page 4 and 5, you can see the expense ratio for each of these. As I mentioned, like equity and income as an example, 80 basis points, 0.80. You can see not one of these exceeds 0.36. 0.36, half of what equity and income would be. And that's the most expensive one. There's some on there that are 0.29. So the ETF structure in a fixed percentage account is fundamentally important. The last component is this idea here that there's no asset management fee. Remember how I just got done punching the Morningstar in the gut there like 5 minutes ago? Remember? And there's a reason I did that, because we are not Morningstar. Morningstar doesn't have their own stuff. Well, actually, they do have their own stuff now, but that's besides the point. In these particular models, they're building out, kind of fund of funds. Like, oh, we're going to use that F-word fund here, and then we're going to use some Invesco here, and then we're going to use like American funds over here, and they're building out basically, and then they're charging you to do it. At Invesco, because we have our own in-house investment capabilities, we're using just our own ETFs. We're one of the only 2 companies and the only strategic ETF manager that doesn't charge that management fee. 25 basis points saved right off the top. So it's really important, as I said, as those costs start to compound and layer up, to be able to kick out one of those costs, the manager fee of 25 bips, that's a savings right there. Then the ETF wrapper gives you further savings. So those are the 3 main benefits of utilizing the Invesco, features and benefits of utilizing the Invesco ETF models. Yes, please.
So the 3 benefits then would be, you said, would be the no management fee, the ETF model, and what was the third one?
Strategic.
Strategic, okay.
Kind of long-term, not trying to.
Copy that, yeah.
Yeah, really good. Okay, and again, just to highlight, this is found on the inside cover, on the green portion. Maybe that's easier. Sorry, Cindy yelling at you. Sorry. Yeah, so just right inside there, that last stanza there gives you the 3. Okay, now, real quickly, let's talk about what is an ETF. An ETF on page 2, it's just the confluence of some of the best attributes of a mutual fund and an individual stock. So you're diversified like a mutual fund, right? So we don't own just one company, we own many. But something like an ETF prices intraday. So like a mutual fund, you may know, closes each day, like the closing NAV of that day. So you want to sell it, you got to wait till the end of the day, and then you sell it and get whatever price. Managers can utilize ETFs intraday. So if there's something, they see something crumbling and they want to, sell out middle of the day, they got that capability. So here is just on page 2, some of the best attributes of a mutual fund, some of the key attributes of a stock, and how ETFs then share the middle ground, so to speak, of those 2 worlds. You can see why they're becoming more and more popular. There you've got on the next page the breakdown of the models. What you'll notice pretty quickly is Primerica does not want you selling ETFs. You can see it because they're in the models, they don't even tell you what you're buying. What they want you talking about are big concepts. Do the IPQ, or actually they've got their separate risk profile questionnaire for the managed accounts, but you get that score, and then you just plug and play. Oh, you're a moderate growth investor. Here's a real brain teaser for you here. You're going to go into moderate growth portfolio. Oh, man, it's like genius, right? That's right. And that's where a lot of people, they get not confused, but sometimes intimidated, like they're going to do the wrong thing. Hey, Scott, I got a guy. What do you recommend here? It's like, no, we're not actually recommending anything. Like, they tell you what to do. They tell you, hey, I like chocolate. Oh, you like chocolate? I got chocolate right here, right? You're not supposed to like convince them they should be doing caramel. It's just like, you like chocolate. There it is. Conservative, conservative. Moderate, moderate. Growth, growth. Then on the top of page 5, we've got 2 that you would classify as aggressive growth, if they were to get that score, because they're all equity. All equity US, all equity global. And this is where they've asked us to construct models like this in the case that you did want to pair us with somebody, maybe potentially. So I would see this as being an aggressive growth option, 100% stocks, no bonds. But maybe you say, oh, I like, this fixed income manager over here. You could pair Invesco equities with somebody else fixed income. That's a way that you can mix and match. You don't have to. And then the last one is income. Income. So you have basically every checkbox for whatever their risk tolerance may indicate covered by these models. And you can see very generically where they invest. Large cap companies, mid and small companies. So again, real high level. We're not trying to scare people or intimidate them in terms of what they're actually buying. But if you did want to do that, just turn to page 6. Yeah, it's funny how much we don't even follow our own recommendations, like story selling and all this. And I don't know, I guess that's marketing for you. I guess there's a picture on the front of a lot of these, so we start there. But by the end of the brochure, you can see we're definitely in Wall Street now. We're basically on the left brain side of things, where you can just simply see the components of each of the models. And these are not managed, by you. Don't feel intimidated, like you're gonna do the wrong thing. These are all professionally managed at Invesco with the portfolio managers that are overseeing these. They're not making a lot of large changes month to month, quarter to quarter, but they will have that oversight that allows for professional management. So kind of the best of both worlds. ETFs in terms of keeping costs down, but you do have this oversight of managers that's shifting and adjusting as the winds of the markets change. Okay, last thing for you. How you guys doing on time? You sick of me yet? Yeah, question?
I got one more. I got a question. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
So I know that you, the ETFs, I don't know if they still do this, but before they were operating under the low volatility anomaly, are they still doing that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if you take a look at the, here, I got something. Yeah, I'm not. Sorry. Got to get this straight. So, yeah, so the low volatility. I know, very much. Somebody has a very idea. A couple extra food, gang. Thanks for the question. Appreciate them. Okay. Oh, excellent. Okay, so the low volatility, if you notice in that, sorry to distract you with the brochure. We're just going to wrap up on the Invesco model brochures. If you wanted to look back at all those slices and dices and how everything is all segmented, a big part of what they do are investing in these ETFs which have low volatility in the name. Low volatility, excuse me. Low volatility is this idea that those companies that exhibit the lowest volatility are actually where you want to be in the market. Because the key is winning by not losing. Winning by not losing. So when you think about how money works, it's a lot of times the losses that end up hurting more than the gains. And this is true of a lot of, you're welcome. A lot of society, like your psyche, you're never as jazzed about making money as you are hurt by losing money. You know what I mean? It's just like as humans, we're more risk averse than we are, excited about the great times. And so what low volatility does is it focuses in on those names that just simply don't give it up, right? They just don't go down a lot because the concept of volatility is not just one to the upside, right? If your thing goes up a lot, that's volatile. But it also exists on the downside when things are volatile. You can lose a lot. So by picking out the low volatility anomaly, what we're trying to do is help clients win by not losing. And you know this is true because you've probably seen this before. If you go down 10% in a year, the next year you got to be up 11. If you go down 25% in a year, the next year you need to be up 34. And if you ever, heaven forbid, go down 50% in a year, you got to be up 100% the next year just to be back to even. So our low volatility approach, and it's shown here, I just happened to throw this in the bag, I'm glad I did. This is highlighting just two that are in these models. Okay, these are just two examples. They're in these models. And again, this is not really for your client. I mean, it's client approved, but if you're talking about this stuff, you're like way too far into the weeds. But it's important that we all have the technical knowledge of what's going on, right? So you can always ask me the tough questions, and then I'll tell you don't talk to the client about it. Okay. What this shows is the up-down capture ratio of the small and mid-cap. What I want you to do is open up this piece that I gave you and turn to page 3. The top of page 3 shows the upside downside. And this is just a fancy way of saying if the market goes up $1, the small cap XSLV will go up 88 cents. We're on this one, sorry. I'm just diving real quick into low volatility as an investment theme. So at the top of page 3, you're on this one. Go ahead and open it up. And then top of the right-hand page. So market goes up $1, XSLV, which is the small low vol, goes up 88 cents. So you don't get all the upside. But when the market goes down $1, you're only going down 75 cents. And I know it doesn't seem like that spread is that significant, but over time, this makes a big deal. And especially for your more wealthy clients. These folks are not concerned about becoming millionaires again. They just want to keep what they have. And so low volatility as a theme is really a winning theme. And then you see the mid cap does even slightly better, up 89 cents if the market goes up $1, goes down 62 cents when the market goes down $1. So this would be like, kind of encapsulated by things like beta, right? These MPT statistics that nobody really uses or follows, but this idea that you're going to have a lower volatility both in the up and down. So your channel of return possibilities is narrower. Okay, good question. Hopefully I didn't go too deep or too shallow. But anytime you guys ever want to call me, I'm not sure if you got my number, but make sure that you guys call me on some of this stuff. Because just because I leave here today doesn't mean that I just disappear, even though you can't see me, so you don't know. But I'm here to work for you constantly. So if you want to dive into this stuff, just let me know. The last piece that I gave you was this Morningstar piece. And I just wanted to do this to show you the quality of our lineup at Invesco. On the cover here is a little bit of the story. We've got a pure focus on investing. This is all we do. We're not in banking. We're not in brokerage. We don't do insurance. We don't have a VA. We're in everybody else's VA. Because all we do is manage money. We think your clients benefit from that focus. And the results are in. 82% of every one of my mutual funds beats its peer group when you look at the 10-year number. So that's depth of performance. I'm not just a one fund shop. We focused on just a handful of investments today, but I've got a lot of reasons to come back and visit you. But if you're interested, I'll get banned after today. Okay. So you can see then you open this up and you've got the funds, and these are many of our 4- and 5-star funds. So I have like 458 products, 100 right now are 4- and 5-star rated. These are just the mutual funds. So you can see, again, as you build out your client portfolios, maybe you start them off with some equity and income, and then add something like American Franchise to the mix, whatever the case might be. But this is where basically your menu, and this is not PFS-ified. There might be like 1 or 2 things in here you can't buy, but it's, you guys can basically buy everything. Just, stay away from these alternatives like long, short. You guys can't be messing around with any of that stuff, but you'll know. The trade won't go through. But just know these are available options as you continue to build out. Remember the visual of equity and income. Baskin-Robbins sells 31 flavors. You know what they sell the most of?
Vanilla.
Vanilla. What's chocolate your favorite? So it's the chocolate one. You can say chocolate. Yeah, vanilla. Vanilla. They got 31 flavors, and they sell the most vanilla. What does that tell you? Yeah. You got it. If you don't have vanilla right, you don't have an ice cream business. You've got to have the basics in place. Equity and income is that big scoop of vanilla ice cream that you build a sundae around. And then we can get in there and talk about, hey, how do you feel? You like China, or you like, how do you think about international? Or you want, a little bit of small cap or mid cap exposure? These all are the toppings. You like whipped cream? You like nuts or no nuts? Cherry? Chocolate, fudge, whatever you want, right? But if you don't have a big scoop of vanilla, you don't have an ice cream sundae, you got like a bowl full of sprinkles, and that's no way, right? So just keep in mind, equity and income is where it all begins. What I've just provided you are basically the 30 other flavors that you can consider building out a complete portfolio. Okay, so we covered a lot of ground. For my second 2 hours, what I was supposed to talk about, what? Well, you guys are done with me. Okay, so let's just summarize real quick. First and foremost, I appreciate so much your support of Invesco. I'm the guy that you're supporting when you write those Invesco tickets, and just know that I don't take this honor lightly. I'm here to work really hard to be your partner, right? I work for you, not vice versa. So just let me know what I can do to help you with your business. You've all got my cell phone number now. Call me if you need anything, but make sure you got that securities license. Right? I'll be by your side to work real hard. Customer service is number 1. Number 2, the company. It's a great company, you guys. I've got models on the managed account side. We got great funds for retail accounts. Our 529 is going to likely be approved here. They're telling us in December now, hopefully December 2018. And we'll see what happens next. But that'll be really good. That'll be like a little small hole in the puzzle that we'll be able to fill. And like I said, they're talking about acquiring Oppenheimer now. This would push us over $1 trillion under management, one of the biggest in the world. So from a corporate strength standpoint, investment